you very much, Mr. Ehis, for having me.
Also on the program, joining us via online link, we have Danjuma Abbas Dangwa. Danjuma Abbas Dangwa is also a gentleman that I call him the good governance advocate, and one gentleman that's always looking at how we can make things good. The two of them are from the Coalition of Association for Leadership, Peace, Empowerment, and Development. Danjuma, you are welcome to the program Ground Zero.
With me, good evening, and good evening to our listeners out there.
All right, thank you so much. And like I said, we'll be looking at the Kaduna State 2024 budget preparation process, what you, the citizen, needs to know. And to be part of the program, we'll open up the phone lines at some point. But meanwhile, for those that want to join us via YouTube, we are live on YouTube. Go to Procyon RTV. Procyon is spelled PROCYON-RTV. That's where you can get us on YouTube. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Do well to subscribe to our channel and also make comments on the post that we have up in respect of today's program. And for other trending news and interesting things you want to see on Procyon Radio and Television, you can go to www.procyonnews.com. That's www.procyonnews.com. When you get there, you'll see our lovely programs both on the television channel and, of course, the radio channel. And together, let's make it happen. So, before we go deep into talking about this topic today, I'd like to give you just a tiny background in respect of this, okay? And despite the ongoing transition process that will end on the 29th of May, the preparations for the Kaduna State 2024 budget is ongoing in earnest. The budget calendar is out already, and the Planning and Budget Commission has requested for citizens' input via the Community Development Charter, the CDC. Our focus today will be why and how will the citizens participate in the process? How is this year's budget performing, and what can we do differently to ensure the budget improves the living standard of the people? That is exactly what we'll be looking at today, because all said and done, everything boils down to the living standard of the people. I'd like to start from the studio. I already have Yusuf Goje with me. First of all, tell us generally what the budget is and what's the importance of the budget to every nation, because when people hear such big words at times, they think it's something that's abstract that doesn't concern them.
Yeah. All right. So thank you very much for having me. Good evening and happy last week of transition to all Nigerians and Kaduna residents.
Okay.
For the budget, I would like to put it this way. We have to really understand what the key responsibility of government is. And by virtue of the Constitution, it says that the security and welfare of the people is the primary purpose of government. Okay. And these things don't just happen by wishful thinking. Our government will not just swing the one magic stick and people will be secured and their welfare needs will be met. The budget is the financial tool that government uses to bring this security and welfare needs of the people into reality. Okay. So without the budget, the government cannot meet its constitutional responsibility. And that is why some of us argue that even the Constitution cannot function without the budget. Okay. And that is how important the budget is, because every officer or every official that is mentioned that has a responsibility in the Constitution must first be paid, must have an office to work in, must have tools to work around, must have money to execute projects. So without these monies, even the Constitution cannot function, because the judge, if you don't pay him salary, will go on strike. The judge will not be able to perform his responsibility if his office is not in place. So that is that. But basically, like we have always said, the budget that government makes annually is no different than the budget you do for your personal responsibilities, if I'll use that word. By the end of the month, okay, I won't say you now, the people working under you are expecting that salaries are paid. Also, they look out for other sources of income. Probably they are doing adashi, which is contribution. Probably they will go and look for loan from a colleague or a friend and other sources of income. And all of these things they put together and say that, okay, by the end of the month, if I get this money together, I'll pay house rent, I'll buy food, I will pay school fees, and they make a list of what they will use the money for. And when the money comes by end of the month, they now use that budget because that is the budget. You identify where the money will come from, then you now attach that money to the priorities that you have. So when the end of the month comes, then they begin to now say, okay, I kept 10 naira for house rent, 10 naira I'm paying house rent. I kept 5 naira for feeding. And that is how the monies are expended. And that is as simple as how government makes its budget. The only difference between your personal budget and the government's budget is that your own is limited to your family.
Yeah.
And once in a while, out of charity, you can extend your hands to your extended family, friends, and other associates. But for government, they have a responsibility for every resident of the geographical area that they control. So, for example, you can compare the budget for 10 million people with the budget for 10 people. So that is why the government budget looks so bogus or so big. You see a lot of numbers because government needs to plan for everybody in that direction. So, in the simplest term, that is what the budget is, where money will come, and how government will spend this money to meet your security and welfare needs.
Okay. And before we come to look at the why and how the citizens should participate in the process, I'd like to ask Danjuma Abbas Dangwa. One common thing in Nigeria is the fact that you see people during when they are getting set to listen to the annual budget, businesses slows down, contractors slows down, things generally, the economy is generally very, very slow. Why is it that people would always want to ascribe or attach their expenses and of course their economic activities around waiting for the announcement of the budget? Benjamin, can you give me an answer to that? Why Nigerians have that attitude?
Well, it is not just Nigerians. I think it's something that is happening world over, especially when service providers are looking out for what government interest is around public spending. Remember, the government is nearly the biggest spender in terms of our economy today, especially when you consider, I mentioned local government councils and what have you. One of the reasons why it is really so is because what government is depending upon is not just the avenue through some of these businesses or individuals will make funds or will realize profit, but also because it will also provide an insight into what constitutes minority and by extension, how much some of their investments will stand protected. For instance, if you find in the issue of out of school children being a menace and government is not really emphasizing or evaluating that in the focus for public spending, and we already have fears and concerns around correspondingly rising insecurity. How about as a result of that? We would want to be sure that there are other mitigating efforts that government will be making, to keep your investments, your personal property safe. So there is intervene. Um, for instance, healthcare delivery is supposed to be home, and then in the event where people have the choices wanting to patronize private health facilities against public health facilities, they still want to know that the public health system is catered for and running. So it also has consequential effect on employees. It will have consequential effect on the president across the board. So yes, should take interest, around budget. However, you don't have the kind of interest around budget here in our countries. As it is in more developed countries, where the people are more aware that whatever penny, whatever dime government is budgeting around is everything that has been cut out of taxpayers' pockets. Nigeria, for instance, we have a situation where most of the funding for government is either coming through revenues from oil, royalties from solid minerals, and most of the time, the average citizen does not see himself paying out of pocket, to finance government. So in so many ways, he's not also keen on the fact that this is public funds, public treasury, and where and how these are expended should matter to him or her. And then there is also the issue of lobbying. People want to ensure that now we don't have what you say, Goje answered very specifically. The, the interest is that people go ahead of themselves, to promote what they want to see sponsored in the budget by lobbying friends, political associates, and what have you, to put in their interest to be accommodated in the budget. And then in doing so, these people, as business inclined individuals, would really be interested in seeing that this interest around are really adequately captured, and it would mean that we have something to look up to with the fiscal year as it unfolds. And so the budget is in itself a document of interest. The document of interest really defines what is prioritized, who gets what, and when.
Okay.
Because in so many ways, the interest of people within the business space, like I said, are going to be what is the need that is their interest, that is captured, catered for, that they can begin to look up to in the course of the year. Contractors, for instance, will want to know that a particular DA that is enjoying some particular project financing is having an increased budget spending, which will mean that there will be more opportunities for them to bring more projects in that sector. And we want to be sure of that even before the year unfolds.
All right.
So much so that they begin to plan ahead of time not to risk their resources in any other place, but just remain focused on when those opportunities will come around and meet them up.
All right. Thank you so much. Now, having known from this first stage of questions that the budget is key to the quality of life of the citizen, we now know that it is important for the citizens to be part of the process. Now, why and how will the citizens be part of this process?
Yes, so the budget is what oxygen is to human beings. That is what the budget is to citizens.
Mhm.
So the quality of life of any nation, any state, or any local government is largely dependent on the quality of budget formulation, budget implementation, and even evaluation of government. And that is why the question you asked, why? In the first place, the reasons why we elect leaders is to give them that mandate in
Yeah.
trust to go and generate resources, manage that resources, and meet our security and welfare needs. So the resources that these public officers that we elect generate is not their personal funds. These funds are meant for, in the case of Nigeria, over 200 million Nigerians. The monies are meant to cater for their security and welfare needs. So it is not the personal money of either the governor or the president or the local government chairman or the legislator. Once you hear the budget, it is public funds. And what that budget is intended to achieve is address issues that affect the public, not the private individual, probably in the capacity of the president, governor, or the local government. So basically, since the constitution has already defined what the primary purpose of government is, it means that when the government is planning to address the security and welfare needs of the people, it is only important that the people are involved in determining exactly what their security needs are and what their welfare needs are, so that government will use that fund on their behalf to address them. So it is important you understand that anytime we hear that the budget process is ongoing, it is an alarm for us citizens, because in there, what they call the budget will determine whether the hospital would have drugs, would have equipment to address health emergencies when they happen. In there, inside the budget, what government prioritizes will determine whether the Almajiri child can go to school, whether those in school can have good chairs to sit on, can have teachers can be well paid, their instructional materials for the teachers to use in teaching students, and the general environment is good. In there in the budget is what will determine whether we will have good roads that would ginger economic activities, that would lead to wealth creation, that will lead to job generation, that will lead to revenue generation, even for government. So the budget is that important. That is why every citizen must not joke with the budget process. It is only important that we understand that as the owner of the money, you should have the right to determine where and how that money should be utilized. Because that is why you elect leaders every 4 years.
Yeah.
To give them the assignment to go and carry out this process to ensure that your needs are met. So every citizen of whether Kaduna State, Nigeria, at any point you hear that the budget process is about to start, your first question is, how do I participate to ensure that my community needs or the general needs of the society you live in or the country are actually adequately captured and financed to ensure that your security and welfare need is met. As to why or how now citizens can participate, you have what is called the budget calendar.
Yeah.
And annually, the government releases this budget calendar to itemize the activities that would be carried out in formulating or putting together the budget for the incoming year. Because budgets are usually meant for the incoming year, not the current year we are in. So in that process, you find out that this budget calendar cuts across what is called the budget cycle. So the budget cycle has four components. The first is where government plans and prepare the draft budget. At that stage, citizens are expected to participate in 2 to 3 stages. The first is there's what is called the medium-term expenditure framework. That one is it's a bit more technical, so I will not go into it so that I don't confuse people the more. But what the medium-term expenditure framework seeks to do is to help government look at the international environment, look at the national environment, look at even our local environment, and see what are those factors that can affect us and probably affect our revenue or the opportunities that can be tapped into to enhance our revenue, because the world has been globalized. We are interdependent in terms of economy of the world. So what affects the economy of US, or for example, the Russia-Ukraine war automatically affects our revenue in terms of foreign exchange and other things. So by the time government looks at that, they further then look at our revenue performance, for example, for the past 6 years. So they will see that for the past 6 years, what government has been targeted as revenue, have they been meeting it? At what level have they been performing? Then they use that 6 years probably to get an average. If we have been generating this amount, between this amount and this amount, then in the coming year, we might be able to achieve it. So those are the technical calculations that are done when these monies are put together, when all of these revenue sources are factored. When we look at crude oil production, in the price of crude oil in the international market, and other assumptions that when they put all of that, they have an idea of how much will be coming in. So based on that, they now share it according to their priority. Budget, that's what is called the budget policy. Okay, you understand that is captured. So, that budget policy statement tells you what the priorities of the governments are, and based on those priorities, they now allocate this amount that they have put together to health. They now pick as okay, health take 15%, education take 20%, infrastructure maybe take 10%. So that is how they now allocate these monies, and that is what is called the budget ceiling. So health sector will now pick their own 15%, and they will now look at their priorities, which is captured in their sector implementation plan, and now begin to say, okay, out of the 100 things we need to do, what are those priorities that will help us achieve the bigger goal? So that's how the budget is break down. So at this medium-term expenditures framework stage, by virtue of the fiscal responsibility law in Kaduna State 2016, the Planning and Budget Commission is mandated to hold a citizens consultation, so that citizens will see what government's assumptions and projections are, make input if possible. But usually that is a bit technical. You need experts and all of that to make input into that document. So at that point where MDAs have gotten their budget ceiling, it is expected that citizens' input is considered at that point. It's at that point that you are expected to go and submit your community needs. So, for example, if the people of Sabo community don't have roads, it's at this point that they are expected to go and submit their demand to say we need roads and these are our justification. So also people in Hanwa's area, probably they are suffering from lack of water. They would come and also make that request to probably the agency that is in charge of water, while Sabo would meet maybe public works or maybe Katra to submit their needs. So it is at that point that citizens are expected to submit. So that is one stage of the engagement. And the third segment of the engagement is usually the annual budget town hall meeting, which is annually held. But that one, because of space, it's only few people get to participate. And usually the engagement is not as robust as it is expected, even though it is good, but it's limited in terms of the number of input. So in the budget formulation stage, those are the three key areas that citizens can engage. And thankfully, one of the things that this government has adopted is what is called the Community Development Charter, which has been approved by the State Executive Council. So there's a protocol that has been approved by the government that this Community Development Charter channel through which citizens can submit their needs to government. And the difference with this is that the Community Development Charter must have three skills or standards that it must pass through before it qualifies to be submitted to the government.
Okay.
The first one is that in the process of prioritizing or generating and prioritizing these needs, it must be inclusive. So there must be evidence that within that particular community, men, women, youths, persons with disability, minority groups, that's even people that are not from indigenous, if we use that word, although in Kaduna State that has been abolished. You understand? They are expected to be part of that meeting. So everybody needs to be brought to the table. Not necessarily everybody in the community, but representatives of those groups must be there. And secondly, it must be participatory.
Okay.
So that means each of these groups would now be separated into clusters. They will now bring out their issues. So women, what are our issues? Youth, what are our issues? So when all of these groups bring their issues, they reconvene. When they reconvene, then they now begin to discuss among themselves, which is the third part. There must be consensus on what projects to submit, because government cannot do all the projects because of scarce resources.
Yeah.
So the communities are expected to prioritize. So we have identified 100 needs.
Yeah.
Can we bring these needs to 4, which we know government can easily do for our community? Because just like our community has needs, all other communities also have needs, and all of them are submitting at the same time. So in prioritizing these 4 needs, these groups must have consensus, because we notice that in some communities where men talk, women don't talk. There are communities that where elders talk, youths don't talk.
Yeah.
So, but this is trying to remove that, so that at the end of the day, the project that community would identify would be projects that would affect majority and would impact these categories of people in terms of equity. So these are the standards that the community development charter process goes through every time. So that is at the point that we are in terms of budget formulation. So when we are done with the budget formulation, we go to the budget appropriation and approval. That is when the State Assembly carries the draft budget, the executive carries the draft budget to the State Assembly to appropriate it, which means to give it legal backing for the executive to spend. So when they go there, the State Assemblies usually also hold public hearing, where citizens can come and make submissions to either agree or disagree, or to bring their own demands. Then more importantly, most people miss this point. The only reason why you have a representative, a member of the House of Assembly, is to always go back to your community, get your needs, and when it is the budget process, he ensures that he puts it into the budget. So your legislator is not just to come and stay in Abuja, and every time he comes to your community, you tell him, honorable, and he shares money and goes. No, that is not his responsibility. His responsibility is to actually ensure that he captures his community needs. If it is road, if it is healthcare, once the budget comes to the State Assembly, he is able to lobby. And sometimes, even before it comes, when it is with the executive, he should be able to get these needs and lobby at that level. Then, after it is appropriated, it goes to the execution stage, then evaluation stage, which is done by the Auditor General's office and all of that. So that is the budget cycle and how citizens can participate in this process.
All right, thank you so very much. And I was going to come to Danjuma Abbas Dangwa, but it seemed as if we lost him a bit. Well, we'll try to reconnect back to him. While doing that, we'll go on with the program. Yes, we have seen, we've talked about how the citizens can participate in the process. All right, we have Danjuma Abbas back now, and we heard Goje has explained to us how the citizens can participate in the whole process and all of that. And everything boils down to the Community Development Charter. Coming to Danjuma Abbas Dangwa now, the Community Development Charter, I know that you are connecting with me from outside of the Kaduna metropolis. And where you are, first tell us about the Community Development Charter, where you are, and how informed are the people in and around Kaduna in respect of the Community Development Charter, and how well they have been part of it. Have they been part of it in the past, and how well have they been part of it? Danjuma Abbas Dangwa.
Okay, well, where I am, I can really tell you that community development charter champions look like an extended political group. And that is because of the level to which they have also been able to cascade the message down, mobilize grassroots participation, and ensure that the people, even political actors, understand the relevance of this tool to planning. Thankfully, it is backed by law, which also means that it is a legal requirement, especially for local government councils, to use this template in drawing up what constitutes the needs that informs their budget. At the moment, yes, you find some real good level of awareness, especially around traditional rulers, and there is to an extent what you would consider, as allied capture, because the people who are seen as gatekeepers, very strong community actors, seems to be more carried along in terms of how this participatory budget process is about in the community. However, we still have a situation where a lot of people do not know. And I will say that, again, it is not just because the efforts being made from the non-state actors is not good enough, but we cannot say that it's still adequate since we still have a group of people who may still be excluded. But one thing that is really key and missing is also the low level of government investment around improving the level of sensitization and awareness creation around this participatory budgeting framework. So much so that when these things are happening, community actors who may know.
Danjuma, are you with us?
Of the
Okay.
engendered mistrust. Yes, I'm with you. Because of the engendered mistrust that people have, when it comes to issues around governance. But again, there is also, the concern that people still are not aware of this process, despite the sensitization on the media space, despite the sensitization on social media, despite the outreaches, that some of these non-state actors have taken the pains of going to communities to really conscientize and enlighten them around. So yes, on the part of non-state actors, so much has been achieved. On the part of government, so much is still desired, to really cascade the message down that indeed there is a participatory approach now to how jets are drawn and approved by government, whether at local government or at state. And hopefully now too, we could say to an extent sooner than later, this will also inform federal government budgets in more distant future.
All right, thank you so very much. Before we go to look at how this year's budget has performed, I would also want you, Yusuf, to just give a tiny insight, because we've had calls in the past when we talked about community development charter of people saying that they don't even know where and how to identify with this and how to go about it. I recall that Otumba Rufai said it's in Kaduna North local government area. And some weeks back on the program, he said that was the first time he was hearing about it. And if there was a way for him to connect with whoever is responsible for it, or what are the team, what is it all about? How can people in the community, someone like Otumba Rufai now, get to know about how to be part of the process?
All right. So what I would just do, maybe I would jot it down so that I don't forget also, is to share the numbers of the community development charter champions in the 23 local governments.
Yeah.
So that when they go to maybe your website or social media handles, they can see their names and numbers so that they can always contact them and they get the timelines for participation. So that is the major way they can connect. But the CDC process is about to start. And that is why we appreciate Procyon News for also providing this platform so that people can get to know, for those that are tuning in, to say that the Planning and Budget Commission yesterday just sent a letter to the civil society saying that by the 7th of June, they are expected that all those needs are sent to them so that they can send it to the various ministries, departments and agencies of government to capture it in their budget, considering, like I said earlier on, the state government has approved the CDC protocol. So it is now a legal, more of, not necessarily legal, but an official instrument where government generates citizens' input into the budget. Last year, one of the things that happened is that the civil society partnered with the government to develop what is called the citizensdemand.org portal, where citizens from the 23 local governments, after generating the CDC, submitted the CDC VAT online, and the Planning and Budget Commission was given the back-end access. So in the comfort of their office, they were also able to retrieve these needs that were submitted by citizens. So this year, we believe that that will be built upon. More needs will be captured, because after we submitted that of 2023, they forwarded some of the needs that the MDAs had identified that they wanted to include in their budgets, and even asked us to give them coordinates. So we are hoping that this year, more inputs from citizens through the CDC will be captured. But basically, on how to participate, I think they should watch out for your social media handle. Then probably they can also go to the www.citizensdemand.org. We'll put the contacts of all the CDC champions. Please, as soon as we put those contacts, try and reach out to them this week, because the process has already commenced, and government has officially communicated to the civil society about the process. So maybe we also beg Procyon News that in between programming, we'll be providing you some updates, even if it's just 2 minutes. We just announce it to people about what stage this process is. But basically, those are the two ways. Contact these people. They have been trained specifically to support communities generate these needs. And these people are community members. They are not government staff.
They are not people coming from outside.
They are not people coming from outside. They are people resident in the 23 local governments, and they have trained others in each of the ward. So when you contact the local government CDC champions, they will connect you with the CDC champion of your ward. Then you can contact him. He tells you when the engagement would be happening.
Wow. So you've had it. So watch out. As soon as we get all the details of the contact of this person, and of course, when some of the CDCs will be happening right from the ward and local government level, on Procyon Radio, Procyon Television, and Procyon News, you'll be able to get these details. Don't forget too that if you go to our social media handles, Procyon RTV on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, you'll be able to get this information also. Procyon is spelled Procyon RTV. Just key them into your search box in any of the popular social media platforms, and you'll see Procyon Radio and Television, and you'll be able to have this information in respect of the community development charter champions and how to go about being part of the process. Yes, let's look at this year's budgets and how it has been performing. And of course, we'd also want to quickly look at what we can do differently to improve the living standard of the people. I want us to put that together because I want us to open up the phone lines like in 3 minutes time.
All right, so I'll try and just be as fast as possible. So one of the things that happens in Kaduna is that quarterly, the state government releases budget performance to show what it generated and how it spent what it generated in terms of that direction. So for 2023 first quarter, which is the first 3 months of the year, they released their first quarter budget performance. And for those that have been following up with this year's budget, a total of 376 billion naira was budgeted to be spent in Kaduna State in 2023. Many people will say these billions, and all of that. So, but in the first quarter, the state government was able to spend about 43.8 billion, which is total about 11.7% of the total budget. So this is just the first quarter.
Okay.
So in the first quarter, they are able to spend 43.8 billion naira, which is 11.7% of the 376 billion that is budgeted for this year. And the standard is that on a quarterly basis, government should be able to spend at least 25%.
Yeah.
So that in each quarter, by the time it is the fourth quarter, you have 100% performance. But budgets usually don't perform 100% because revenues sometimes are not realized as expected. Then out of this, there is the recurrent expenditure. And in 2023, about 135.5 billion was budgeted for recurrent expenditure. So what is recurrent expenditure? It is a combination of personnel, which is the salary, allowances, and other welfare of these public servants, and also overhead cost, which is monies government used to run its affairs, buying the diesel, fueling vehicles, buying paper, and all of those money. So in total, government budgeted 135 billion for salaries and allowances and for running of government affairs. And out of that, in the first quarter, they were able to spend about 26.8 billion naira, which is about 19.8% of that total 135 billion naira. Then capital project, which affects everybody, which is the roads, hospitals, and all of that people see.